Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Cometan. We're now on season 3, episode 3. Obviously, I'm Cometan, and I'm here today to talk to you about kind of just a mixture of different things. I wanted to really just sit down again and do one of these singular episodes formats where I just really sit in front of the camera and talk to the world really about the things that I've been up to since season 2 ended, what I'm doing at the moment, and just focusing on a few different topics that are of interest to all of us, I hope. So first of all, let's just begin with a little bit of an update with what I've been up to. I've been really sort of deep into my PhD thesis at the moment, and really just doing a lot of work on that, on the human rights front and freedom of religion or belief. And that's sort of kind of consuming a lot of my time up at the moment. So it's really nice to be able to have a break and do something different, which is, of course, the production of season 3 of this series. The PhD is going well, I think, and it's going in the right direction that I want it to go into. I'm beginning to really sort of continuing to develop a lot of the theories and ideas that I had that you will have seen in season 2, one of the episodes. I think it might have been episode 16, something like that, where I was speaking about recognitionism and freedom of religion or belief. I'm just kind of developing those ideas more, thinking about implementation of those methods of freedom of religion, trying to explore my theories, challenge them more, but also continuing to look at recognition of religion or belief around the world. One thing that I do have to announce regarding that is I'm going to be establishing what I'm calling the Religious Recognition Project, which is really exciting. This is going to be kind of a research, a research project which will sort of extend beyond what my thesis is able to contain. Because last month I had a conversation with my supervisor, and he was like, there's too much in this thesis so far, and you really want to try and condense that down. And then I had this idea for a project, a thing that I can put all this extra information into as a kind of resource. And so that's what this project is going to be. It's going to be featured on cometan.org, which maybe in the future, hopefully, it'll be able to have its own website when I've got enough resources to provide it with one. But yeah, so it's going to be called the Religious Recognition Project, and it's going to cover recognition of religion or belief around the world. So it's going to cover different countries, different aspects of this topic that I'm trying to bring out to the human rights community. And it's just going to be a way for me to really condense down a lot of the information that is in the thesis, and trying to get it out of the thesis and put it into another platform, really, because you can't include too much in the thesis, and I want to kind of specify and narrow down what I'm actually putting into the thesis. So that I thought that was a really good way to kind of get that information out there. So that's something new that I'm working on at the moment, and that's a new announcement for this video. And then also last month, I started again with a really exciting new chapter really for Astronism, which is the creation of the Astrodoxy, which is, of course, the next of the grand treatises, the great treatises of Astronism, which I'm so excited about. Obviously, the Omnidoxy is there's parts of it that are still not finished. The Astronicon, for example, is still not published yet. So much work to do with that, but I feel like I need to carry on, and there's so much more that I want to talk about with regards to Astronism, Transcension, and some of the new things that have emerged this year with regarding Astronism. And so that's why I'm already moving on to the Astrodoxy. I started it really about a year ago in October 2020. I started writing sort of the foundations of it. And it's sort of taken me another year to kind of come back to it, really. And in September, I was lucky enough to sort of have, you know, a couple of weeks where I was able to dedicate to progressing it a little bit further. So we've got a few steps ahead with that now. Really different from the Omnidoxy. Which is the main thing to get across. It's got a different feel. It's got a different kind of just a different branding to it, different approach. It's very, very different from the Omnidoxy, and it's really cool to be able to see that progression. Because I think there was a time where when I was writing the Omnidoxy, I really felt like, wow, this is the ultimate thing. You know, this is the pinnacle of what Astronism is, encompassed within a text. And I've realized now that we're kind of moving beyond the Omnidoxy now into new territory, new ideas, new words, concepts, you know, and doctrines, and so exciting to see that progression. So a lot of the so from now on, majority, all of the things that you'll hear me speak about will be astrodoxical. They will be part of the Astrodoxy when it is published. So anything new that you hear me speak about will all be in the Astrodoxy, or should all be in the Astrodoxy. So yeah, so I'm working on that. I don't know yet when that will be eventually published. It'll be years, probably. Probably be something like season 6, something like that, of the conversation with Cometan by the time we actually get to the publication of the Astrodoxy, maybe even further than that. So we'll see how that progresses, but it's very exciting, and a lot of new things are on the way. So that's just a little bit of an update as to what I've been up to since the end of season 2. Of course, production of season 3 is really exciting. Of course, you'll have seen the 2 episodes that came before this one. Got quite a few interesting things lined up to begin this season 3. Today, as I've said, I want to focus on just a couple of different topics, really. The first is I want to kind of touch on this idea of the future of religion again. I wasn't able to actually complete a lecture or give the lecture in person due to the COVID pandemic that happened last year. On the future of religion. And of course, since then, my ideas, my ways that I present ideas have developed, they've advanced to a much greater state. So, you know, and I've obviously been thinking about this for longer as well. And so what I want to think about today is, what does a new religion need? And of course, I want to apply this to astronism. What does a new religion need to begin, really, to begin its for the future? We're talking about religions of the past, and I think in a lot of sort of religious studies, we're talking about the past a lot, because a lot of the religions that exist currently are very past oriented. Christianity, for example, is very past orientated. You know, you've got a religion that is based on things that took place, events that took place 2,000 years ago, and those are the things in Christianity that are believed to have brought about salvation. So of course they're going to focus on those events that took place so long ago. And of course in astronism, similarly, yes, we do We think about the scope of man, of course. We think about those prehistoric times, the enkindlement, things like that. But astronism on the whole is actually much more future orientated. We're thinking about space exploration. We're thinking about the prospects of that, and how that can bring about salvation. So essentially what I want to try and explore today is this idea of what a new religion needs. I think the way that we can kind of begin to approach this idea is looking at what religions have brought to people in the past, and what religions that are currently alive and well today, what they provide to people, and trying to look at what new religions would need to do for the future generations to provide to them. Of course, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, whatever religion you subscribe to, you will understand that it gives you a sense of meaning. It gives you a sense of, it kind of guides you through life. It answers questions that are very difficult to answer. It provides you with that comfort, that affirmation a lot of the time. It asserts things that are, it asserts ideas, it asserts concepts that are quite strange sometimes to think about, but also very mystical often, not mundane things. These are things that are, of course, supernatural in many religions, of course. So I think all of these things, yes, future religions can share those things, but what about something like astronism? What would astronism need to, what does astronism need to do, and what are the characteristics that it needs to have in order to in order for it to be successful in the future, now and in the future? So those are the kind of things that we could think about. In terms of what astronism needs, we need to think about the future of humanity, don't we? We need to think about, of course, in the astronist perspective, that means space exploration, and that means expanding into outer space. Not for everyone, of course, but that is the astronist goal. That is the astronist vision of the future. For people who are going to stay on the earth, we still need those fundamental elements of what a religion provides, which is, of course, meaning of life, guidance, answering questions that are difficult to answer, providing that affirmation. Of course, what astronism needs to be able to do, though, I think, is provide a developed philosophy. I think that's what a lot of these new religions that have emerged, that's what they are lacking. I think a rational developed theology and philosophy. I really do like some of these new religions, and some of their ideas are interesting. Scientology, for example, is interesting. It's curious. It makes me curious of it. You know, as a person who's into new religions, obviously. But I do think that Scientology is lacking that rational element, that rational side. There are some things that Scientology teaches that aren't just strange, they're just sort of, they're just impossible, you know. And I think that, I mean, you could say that of some things of Christianity, depending on how skeptical you are, obviously. But I do think there are elements of Scientology that just remain undeveloped. It doesn't quite fulfill the same things that Christianity does, for example, or Islam does for some people. And what I mean by that is that developed theology. That takes time, though, which may happen for Scientology in the future sometime. Christianity didn't have a developed theology, you could say, until the Council of Nicaea. So that's sort of kind of like 300 years-ish of time where Christianity really was very all over the place. It didn't really have an authorized or sort of an authority of doctrine. And of course, that probably was the reason why a lot of the early church was very dispersed and quite uncommunicative, you could say, to some degree with each other, sparse in that sense, unestablished. Of course, that all changed with the Council of Nicaea, but you can see there that, yes, Christianity hasn't always had, a very developed doctrine. That's only taken place over the 2,000 years that it's existed in. So yes, and I think, and I tried to put that into perspective for astronism as well. Astronism has only been around for 9 years, or 8 years, 8 or 9 years. So, we're coming up for 9 years next year. So 8.5 years, to be precise. And so when you compare that, of course, astronism's not going to have as much of a developed theology and philosophy as some of the other religions. It does take time. New ideas come from new people. Of course, a lot of the doctrines of Christianity came from theologians. Obviously, Thomas Aquinas, look at him, 1,200 years after the death of Christ almost. So with that, we have to have time, we have to have that consideration that time comes into it, and we need time to develop things and advance those ideas. But at the same time, yes, I think that really is important. There has to be those fundamental elements, those fundamental doctrines, those fundamental concepts that resonate with people. They have a function in the world. Salvation is one of those things, I think. Of course, the afterlife as well is a very important element that at the moment, well, in the astrodoxy, that's changing, because I was going to say at the moment, the ideas of the afterlife and astronism have remained on the back burner, really. That's changing really with my writing of the astrodoxy. I'm putting a lot more time and effort into thinking about that. And also thinking about, of course, salvation, the concept of salvation in astronism, which is, of course, what we refer to as transcension. So I really do think that a new religion needs to have those core ideas that other religions have had in the past, but it needs to have its own spin on them. That's the main thing. If astronism had the exact same ideas, like salvation through a person, through God, for example, or salvation through a particular event like Christianity does have, I don't think astronism would be successful. And I've really thought about that, and I've really tried to give. And it's not been always, I think it's, I don't want it to come across as though it's been orchestrated in this way. What I've always, some of these newer ideas have come across naturally. I didn't think at the time about this idea of salvation through the astronomical world. Oh, that's different from Christianity, so we can go with that. I didn't think in that way. I just believed that, and I just believed in that concept. But what I was going to say was, we need these sort of fundamental ideas like salvation, afterlife, but I think new religions of the future need to build on those ideas and give a new spin on them. So obviously astronism believes in salvation, but it believes in salvation through the astronomical world, which is a new idea, really. We've not really seen that before. I'd like to get people's opinion on that. Is there things that we've seen in the past where salvation has been intertwined with the idea of space exploration and the astronomical world? I don't think so. Of course, space exploration and the afterlife, of course, have been long intertwined, of course, as part of the Astronic tradition. And again, that's another spin that Astronism has placed onto this idea, but of course in a very literal way now, not just thinking about it in a spiritual way, but also in a very literal way. That yes, the outer space and the astronomical world is the most important environment, the place where we will understand really why we're here, where we're going, and the future of humanity. So I think I think also a new religion has to have a very distinct theme, which is of course what Astronism has. And I don't want this to come across as though Astronism is perfect. It isn't perfect, but I'm trying to just think about the things that Astronism has to try and put out there and say, are these things right? Are these things what we need in the future? What are the religions of the future needing to do? And I think, again, yes, a religion of the future needs a very distinct theme. Of course, the theme of Astronism is outer space, the astronomical world. So, of course, I think that that's the right way to go, of course. I think also religions of the future need to be more accommodating to science in order for them to survive. So belief systems that don't contradict or go against science and sort of that rationalism as well. I think that's where a lot of these sort of new sort of UFO religions, some of them, and sort of the newer religions, I think some of them have fallen down in the sense that they directly refute some aspects of science that are just so grounded. They can't be, it would be impossible to refute some of these elements of scientific knowledge that we have. So I think that's just, I think that the religions of the future, the belief systems of the future, need to take into scientific doctrine and dogma, definitely. And of course, does that mean then that, of course, elements of the supernatural have to be discounted? Then yes, then that is the case. Of course, but a religion and a belief system are not science. And I think that we need to really distinguish those, continue that the distinguishment of those two things is that, and I kind of thinking about this with Scientology, of course, science is in the name. So you'd think maybe they're trying to make it into kind of a scientific religion. I think there's definitely room for those, but I do think that religion and belief systems need to remain distinct from science. Yes, don't refute what science is doing and what science is saying, like, of course, Christianity has done and some other religions have done in the past, but work with science, work alongside it, but also distinguish yourself from it, I think is the main thing that new religions need to do. I've always tried to do that with astronism. I've never disputed anything that science has said about the astronomical world. I've just tried to give my own perspective on that, give the astronist perspective on space exploration. Essentially what I'm trying to say here is that the areas of ideas and concepts and knowledge that astronism is dealing with are distinct from that of science, from where science is dealing with things. Of course, there is some overlap when we talk about cosmology and things like that. And there's some butting heads there a little bit, which is fine. We don't have to agree all the time. But I do think that in terms of astronism and science, they can work alongside each other. They do. And I don't think that science refutes astronism, and I don't think astronism is trying to become science, to refute it, or anything else. Religions of the future also need to be very much aware, of course, of human rights and work in the field of human rights. Freedom of religion or belief needs to be taken into account. and also other things that are taking place in the world, LGBTQ, of course, things like new types of relationships that are taking place, different approaches to marriage, these types of things. Religions of the future need to take into account these things. Quite tiring, you could say, a lot more complicated, you could say, for these new religions, trying to deal with these new ideas, new concepts, new ways of living, but they need to be able to do it. And astronism has to be able to do that. Or any other religion needs to, I think, in order for it to become a mainstream religion. This is what I'm trying to get to here. We're not talking about small cults or small, you know, religions that are sort of very specific to a community. I'm talking about mainstream, creating a mainstream new belief system, new religion. Now you could say, do we need to do away with the sort of concept of religion altogether? And I'm kind of trying to think about that and trying to move beyond religion, really, with astronism and some of the astronist theories of astroncy, which is a new type of belief system that I'm trying to develop here with astronism, that kind of isn't religion, is sort of related to religion, but is a new type of belief system. So you could have philosophy, religion, spirituality, and then astroncy here. That's what I'm trying to think about at the moment, trying to develop that. Takes so long in the future for that to be recognized and developed, but trying to just think about that, you know, do we need to move beyond this idea of religion? Is that what a new religion needs to be? Is actually progressing beyond that and creating new types of belief systems, not just new types of religions, new types of belief systems. And that's what astroncy or stellancy is with regards to astronism. So I think that a new religion has a lot of complicated issues to try and navigate in this modern world. I think that it needs to learn from the ideas or the things that are taking place with regards to attitudes towards religion at the moment. So, you know, religion began very unorganized, you know, in the prehistoric times, then became very highly organized, obviously with things like Christianity, and has now seems to be moving away from that again. Organized religion, as we see, is becoming less of a force in society, but religion and spirituality as a broader concepts remain. And I believe they shall do so forever, because we will always need them. But this idea of the organized religion, the sort of focus on ritual, the focus on ideas like sacrifice, ritual, these very ancient ideas, I do think that a new religion maybe needs to move on from those now. And that's why in astronism, concepts of ritual don't really play that big of a role. Ritual doesn't play that big of a role at the moment in astronism. Maybe we need to think of new types of rituals. Human beings will always have rituals, but it's just whether going to a specific building, you know, like for mass, whether that is the future or not. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on it, but I think it's an interesting idea to think about is that the future of religion, you know, going to a specific place, or can we do religion wherever we are, especially with this digital world now as well? Astronism has emerged on the internet more so than anywhere else in the physical world. There's more things about astronism, more information about astronism on the internet than there is in the physical world. I mean, if you went about your day in the physical world and you never even touched a smartphone or the internet, you probably wouldn't even know astronism exists, because you know, there's no way that you would know about it really, other than a book maybe that you might come across that I've written or something like that. So these new digital religions, which is what I sometimes describe astronism as, these are trying to, they're changing what belief and how we practice religion and belief. They're changing what that becomes. And we're really seeing that at the moment with Astronism. And the way that people are engaging with these new ideas that I'm producing, I'm putting out there. And, from all around the world as well, Astronism's spreading differently to how Christianity spread. It's not spreading through empires or through the Silk Road like Buddhism did. It's spreading through social media. It's spreading online, like with this video. So that's changing religion and belief, isn't it? So I think it's changing as we speak. And I think that a new religion like Astronism needs to be dynamic. It needs to have a very strong identity and theme, because there's a lot of noise in the world. There's a lot of misconceptions about religions and beliefs and things like that. It has to have a very strong identity. I think it also has to have a strong leader. Whether I'm that person, I don't know yet. I'm trying to be. Whether I will succeed in that is another thing. I think it has to have strong ideas, very, very solid, strong ideas at the core of it. Yes, at the periphery of Astronism, sometimes I like to think of Astronism as like a concentric circle. There's those sort of core ideas at the core, really fundamental core ideas. They need to be solid. Ideas like the salvation through the astronomical world. We can explore that idea, we can refute it, we can really pull it apart, but it has to be solid. It has to be, that's what we're clinging to, that's what we believe, that's what we have faith in. Then there's other circles around that, bigger circles as we go out on the outer edges, that are the periphery, that are sort of the the periphery of what Astronism is. And so maybe that can be something we just think about at next time, is sort of, when I'm in my next book, I can think about how those concepts relate to one another. The core of Astronism, and then the periphery, things that don't really matter as much, but they still make up a lot of what Astronism is. The next sort of topic that I want to kind of focus on in this video as well is the idea of space religion. And really how I see this is a new category, really, of religion and belief that could stand alongside nature religion. There's sort of nature religions. I don't really know what any of the ones are in that type of category, really. Nature religion, organized religions, you could say theocentric religions maybe is another kind of category, really, of religions. But this idea of space religion is quite interesting. And I think sometimes I've referred to Astronism as a space religion, or the space religion. And I think it's a valid title, because I think that it demonstrates belief in space, or faith in space, faith in not just in that space exists, but faith in the idea that space, outer space, the environment of outer space, space exploration as an endeavour, is the most important thing, or is the most, or should be the thing that we all focus on. And I think that really what this idea, this category of space religion is kind of could encompass a lot of things like astrology, astrolatry, astromancy, and then obviously astronism itself, but also things like UFO religions, things like that. So I think that this category of space religion is something that really needs to be established soon. I really want that to be established and recognized soon, because I think it's important to categorize what astronism is within this category of, and also thinking about kind of what what the sort of beliefs that are key themes that are part of that, sorry, what kind of the key themes will be part of that space religion category. I could say things like belief in the salvific powers of the astronomical world, the idea that the astronomical world can bring about salvation, possibly things like cosmocentrism definitely would be one, which is the sort of the worldview that the cosmos is the most important element in existence, things like that. So I think they would characterize this category of space religion. And obviously I see astronism as being part of that. Probably going to write maybe like a journal article, something on that idea of space religion, try and get that sort of established, really, because I think it needs to be. I think it's a genuine category that could stand alongside nature religion, or maybe even exist within nature religion, maybe. Of course, nature religion includes things like paganism, you know, things like the worship of the earth, worship of nature, essentially. So I think I do still think, though, no, I do still think that space religion is a separate category from that. Even though one could worship the astronomical world, which is a valid practice within astronism, I would distinguish that from worshipping sort of the earth itself, really. So I do think space religion is a distinct category of religion and belief. That could stand alongside some of these other categories. And that really nicely ties into one of the last things I wanted to talk about for this video, which is the idea of transcension. Now, transcension, I've talked a lot about this year. We published the institutional dictionary earlier this year, and a lot of the ideas of transcension, the newer ideas, came into that and were first sort of presented through that dictionary earlier this year. But of course, really what transcension, and I'm trying to sort of explore this idea of transcension more and more, trying to think of new words for it as well, trying to think of all the different aspects of it. And this is why, as well, I've created the major astronist mechanism as well, which is what I'm going to be exploring in one of the later episodes of this series, of this season. I'm going to be doing a presentation on Transcension, on all the latest things that have taken place this year with Transcension, and then exploring the major Astronist Mechanism 3, which was completed in August. And so obviously that wasn't part of season 2, so I'm really excited to present that. But really what we need to get down to is, for this video, is Transcension is salvation through the astronomical world. I keep saying that because that concept is so huge. That idea, and trying to think about, I suppose, the validity of that. You know, if salvation really, or redemption, or transcendence, these kind of interwoven ideas, if that can be achieved through the astronomical world, what would that look like? I think it will look like a more advanced humanity, a humanity that is able to reach its ultimate condition is definitely one, which is obviously what we referred to as the ultimation. It would describe a humanity that has a hell of a lot more knowledge than we do now about questions of the universe, questions that we cannot answer at this stage in our current sort of stage of understanding. And that's why science is so important for astronism, so important. Astronism, I think some religions of the past, and this is what I wanted to talk about, sort of religions of the future, new religions, because religions of the past seem to have said, well, we know it all in a way. The Catholic Church continues to assert that kind of attitude. Maybe they don't say it so explicitly, but in their dogmas and doctrines, they implicitly suggest that they have all the knowledge they need in many ways. And I think that that really was demonstrated through the persecutions that took place, and the Inquisition as well, that obviously killed a lot of scientists and new thinkers and philosophers and astronomers as well. So what I think a religion of the future, and this is what I want Astronism to be, what a religion of the future needs to do is be accommodating to science. Astronism needs science. I think sometimes with Christianity, it kind of thinks, well, we don't need science. We're fine without that. We know where we're going in the afterlife. We're happy with what we believe, and that's it. Astronism is different from that, because what Astronism wants to achieve, which is, of course, space exploration, expanding humanity beyond the solar system, of course, into the galaxy and beyond, and also reaching the ultimation, of course. What that, of course, requires is science and technology in order to achieve that. This is not just a mystical thing. This is not just a spiritual thing. For Astronism, salvation is a very practical endeavour. It's a very physical endeavour. It is not all spiritual. Yes, there are certain aspects of Transcension that are spiritual, more mystical, you could say. But actually the core of what Transcension is, and this sort of astronomical version of salvation, is actually very physical. It is very practical, physical, very, you could say, very realistic in many ways. It is not supernatural. You know, we're not saying that God is bringing about salvation, God is bringing about transcension. I'm not saying that. What we're actually saying is that no, this physical entity that is the astronomical world and the endeavor of space exploration, those are the things that are going to bring us to our ultimate condition. Those are the things that are going to bring us to salvation eventually. I'm kind of trying to move away from this idea of using the word salvation, because I think it's got so many connotations interwoven with Christianity. I think the Christian understanding of what salvation is relates to what the Astronist version of what salvation is, but they're not entirely the same thing. And I think this is why I'm trying to think of new words to refer to what I'm talking about. This is why I've come up with the words of transcension, dissension, and all these other new things, because no, they don't overlap with what Christianity is saying about what salvation is. And so that's why I need to create new words to refer to these things, because what Astronism is saying is that salvation is something different from what Christianity has said. Yes, it is saving humanity, but it's saving humanity in a different way. Not necessarily all in a spiritual way, but also in a physical way. But also a future generations way as well. You may not see the benefits of salvation. Astronists today may not see the benefits of salvation, but your future generations, the future generations of humanity, will do if Transcension continues. So again, there are little bits of difference there between what Astronism views salvation as and what Christianity does. But again, what I think Transcension, the core of what Transcension is saying that salvation isn't to be found here. That we have the tools, that we have the ideas and tools and potential to achieve transcension, but transcension isn't to be found on the earth. That this closed system of the earth is not where we're going to fulfill that potential. It is not where all the answers lie. And I think that's a major, major difference between Astronism and a lot of the other religions that we see in the world. And also as well, a sort of lesser role for God as well in astronomism. That's another thing we see. Not sort of to say that God doesn't exist, not to that degree, although there are atheist astronists, but to say sort of a lesser role for God, really. This is why we're cosmocentric, you know, placing the focus on the astronomical world. That is the place that we need to be in, that we need to understand. And then that's why we need science and technology to get us there. Isn't that interesting? I think that's so interesting. Astronomism needs science. It needs technology and science to get it to where it needs to fulfill salvation, really. So again, Transcension needs science and technology to achieve its aims, really. Because how else are we going to get to the other side of the Milky Way? How else are we going to explore what black holes are and all these different things? How are we going to be able to do that without the science, the knowledge that science provides about the universe? And how are we going to do that without the technology that science helps us to build, you know, the rockets, the propulsion systems that we need in order to get to outer space? How are we going to do that, you know, without those two things? So astronomism relies on science, which is a very new thing, of course. You know, that's very different from Christianity, which is, you could say, is sort of blocked science out for much of its history. So again, new religions here are emerging, and the new religion of astronomism is emerging as relying on science in many ways, but also continuing to be distinct from it. So it's interesting. The relationship between those two is very, very interesting. Complicated, you know, a little bit strange, you could say at times, but I think interesting and sort of, obviously science doesn't need astronomism, but I think astronomism definitely does need science and technology. So I suppose, again, just to sort of begin to wrap up this video, because I only wanted to make it sort of a short video, really. I didn't want to go too over the top with it, was just to explore some of these ideas and get back into, you know, the season 3 and sort of give you an update on what I've been up to. With the astrodoxy and with, of course, certainly this major Astronist Mechanism 3 that I've created in August of this year, what I'm trying to do is explore the concept of transcension at a level that is so detailed, such a detailed level, and I hope to go even more detailed in the future. The more detail, the better, on this idea of transcension, which is very, very quickly has already really become a core dogma of astronism, really, a core element of what astronism is. Which maybe a couple of years ago it wasn't. I think astronism was something different a couple of years ago, but now it has definitely, transcension has now definitely taken center stage as a concept, and it hadn't done for quite a while. So it's interesting how astronism is progressing in that way. So yes, with the astrodoxy, it is definitely the book of transcension, really, and you could use that as an alternative title in many ways, because a lot of what the astrodoxy is talking about is this concept of transcension. And again, exploring these ideas really at such a greater depth than what a single video can do. The different, I mean, that's what I've tried to do with these major astronist mechanisms, really, is to present in a visual, diagrammatic format transcension as I see it, and how we're going to get there, in a very, trying to make it rational, keep it rational, keep it realistic, rational, provide the tools and the ideas to do this. But yes, that's what astronism is. Astronism has become the religion of transcension, really, in many ways. And astronism really is the endeavour of transcension. It is trying to achieve that endeavour, trying to push humanity towards that endeavour of transcension. And it's just so kind of crazy, you know, kind of crazy, kind of amazing as well, interesting, but also, of course, you know, a core element of astronism now is. And so hopefully with this idea of transcension as well, astronism distinguishes itself from all of the other religions that are out there at the moment as well. That's one thing that I do hope will take place. You know, because I think that, again, going back to our core theme here, is the idea of what a new religion needs to do. And I think, again, it needs to stand out, needs to have its own new ideas. Many religions that are new have kind of borrowed ideas from, I mean, we're always borrowing ideas. I don't mean that. I mean that its core ideas need to be distinct from religions past. They really has to be. And so that's why kind of focusing on this idea of transcension, because I really do think that that's where astronism is heading towards. And the main ideas and philosophy behind astronism are becoming more, well, we call it analipsocentric, actually. That's the technical term, analipsocentrism. So that's what astronism is becoming. It's becoming very sort of transcension centric. So I'm going to leave this video there. This is just kind of like a chatting video. I don't want to ramble on too far. You know, you'll see, obviously, hopefully, the next video of a conversation with Cometan. I hope you'll enjoy that. It'll be probably another interview episode, and then we'll be moving on to hopefully doing a lecture on Transcension, I'm hoping, and you know, doing a really sort of long lecture on that and what's taken place since season 2, looking at the major Astronist mechanism 3. Really looking forward to that episode. So that'll be in a couple of episodes time, but I hope you've enjoyed this one and been able to sort of just see me on my own without another person today, and be able to just catch up. And, you know, of course, if you have any queries, questions, things you want to tell me, things you want to talk about, just comment below and let me know, and I'll try and reply to them whenever I can. And I hope to see you in the next episode of A Conversation with Cometan. So see you later, guys.